Uganda from last week, getting people lose their lives, about 20, and we'll also be taking a look at how then well-braced we are, even at the level of the borders as a country, to make sure that we protect our people. Ebola next door, as they would say right here on the Daily Nation, and more than around 5 days since the declaration of Ebola in Uganda, while Kenyan officials continue to drag their feet, that is with minimal screening at the Busia and Malaba borders, and posts even as the deadly virus spreads from the Mubende ground, that is zero, into Kampala, and claims 20 victims and counting. Unfortunately, we hope that this then would be put to rest as early as possible. And what should you do? These are some of the things that you need to do. Avoid contact with blood and body fluids of people who have tested positive of Ebola. As well, caregivers and health workers should avoid touching items used by patients without gloves. Also, anyone who goes to an area with Ebola outbreak should monitor their health for about 21 days. And as well, safe burial rites are advised, and people should avoid touching the bodies of the dead. This is the first story, or the main story, as captured on the Daily Nation, and we are all called upon to be careful on the world, on the question of environment, and of course so much on the question of education and the questions of insecurity. These are stories that have been captured, and as pertaining to how the current government of Dr. William Ruto then would handle this. But on this other side, we celebrate Kipchoge, Eliud, a record breaker. The man, Kipchoge himself, a story captured on page 35, as of course he crossed the finish line to win the Berlin Marathon race. That is yesterday, and Kipchoge smashed his own world record by about 30 seconds, running at 2 hours, 1 minute and 9 seconds. That is in Berlin. The double Olympic marathon champion will also bag an estimated $113 that is about 13.7 million for his exploits. That is 113,000 US dollars. We celebrate and appreciate that great win. And on the question of environment, Deputy President Gashagua's Shamba system plan sparks controversy, and we'll be looking at that alongside the gentleman that I'll have on set this morning. Deputy President to chair climate meeting today, days after he announced the return of controversial Shamba system. Just what system is this? What does it dictate? And of what benefit, and also the ramifications that it comes along with, as captured on page 10 of the Daily Nation, as well as on the question of the education sector. Now, publishers back Ruto proposal to review the CBC. And the Kenya Publishers Association say that new school system has areas that need urgent improvement, as captured on page 6. Well, their government says that they're not focused on making, adjustments in terms of, getting us to the 844 system or getting us back to the 844 system, but to make the necessary improvements so that we all get it right. On the question of insecurity, then we have, when will it stop? 8 officers killed by bandits, unfortunate occurrence. Police constable, a local chief, and 2 civilians were killed in Turkana County by the Pokot bandits. This is a story that has been captured on the front page and expounded on page 11. The police officers' bodies were to be airlifted to Nairobi yesterday. And of course, distraught families continue to mourn the loss of their loved ones. And according to a member of parliament, Daniel Epuyo, he says that it's time the government walks the talk, because then the raids are actually no longer cattle rustling. They have turned into terrorism. This is quite unfortunate, and definitely we'll be looking at the same alongside the gentleman that we have this morning, just to get to understand what really needs to be done in terms of quelling these cases of insecurity. Political leaders want the Ruto government to end the insecurity, as promised during the campaigns. These are the main stories that we have this morning, or have been captured on the papers. This as Ruto eyes major changes in the security docket, as captured on the back page of the Daily Nation. This could have serious implications for personalities and also the ruling coalition, frequently referred to as the deep state. President and his allies have accused some officials of trying to stop his state house bid. So we'll be looking at these adjustments and whether then They will come in handy to bring in the peace and quiet that we require as a people at this very moment of these cases that are being reported now. The Standard and UDA should work with fiscal truth. This is a story captured on page 10. Well, definitely as to how best they'd be able to address the question of the economy, while we have reports from the central bank that really what it is that they project might not really work for them. We can only wait to see how best they'd be able to manage this, as they also incorporate financial and economic brains for us to be able to get it right economically, and government to increase NSSF contributions. A story captured on page 7. Definitely this would not be received well, but perhaps then comes in handy to make sure that as a country we are able to address the question of discrepancies that we have in the economic sector, and above everything increase that aspect of tax that will then translate to making sure that we're able to fund our very own budget, a budget that they say a majority goes into the payment of debt, and Ruto's government then seeks to address that. They speak of saving as a nation, so that even when we have to borrow, then we'll definitely borrow from our very own savings, and this money will be in circulation on our very own economy. Now, Ruto invites about 40 clerics to purify the State House. Divine intervention, as one would want to call it. President held Thanksgiving prayers to celebrate his election win hours after jetting back into the country from the United States, and urged the clergy to pray for his office and the economy that is choking in debt. This is captured on page 6. We'll be looking at that as well as we continue to celebrate our very own Eliud Kipchoge for making us proud. And new marathon world record at the Berlin Marathon, a story captured on page 3, and as well in the sports sector that is on page 40, which is the back page of the Standard newspaper. Two-time Olympic champion breaks his own world record at Berlin Marathon. He says the 37, the most important thing is, or that he says that 37 is the most important thing in his mind, and that he feels fresh and young. Congratulations, Eliud Kipchoge. And briefly, the People Daily. What does the People Daily speak of this morning? Definitely the Eliud Kipchoge marathon world record. Yes, as you can see right there on the screen. And of course, page 32 expounded there. Marathon legend claims fourth title as debutant Wanjiru comes second in women's category, and we appreciate and celebrate them. Ruto speaks tough after police death. President vows to deploy more security to bandit-prone areas and regions hours after the killing of 8 police officers and a chief in an ambush on a Saturday night, warning that cattle rustling will be a thing of the past. That is captured on the front page, expounded on page 4, and we definitely cross fingers that indeed this will be addressed. On the question of the education sector, cash to be released as schools reopen. This is captured and expounded on page 8, as we all seek to see how best then the competency-based curriculum would serve us, as of course we await to see the exit of CSs, Magoha being one of them. Well, whether he will exit or whether then the Ruto government will consider him is a question of wait and see. This as oil brands recalled by KEBS, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and of course still on the shelves. A story captured on page 16. And I mean, as late as yesterday, I was somewhere at the supermarket, and definitely you could see some of these brands that were called out, I mean, still on our very own shelves. These are the stories that have been captured on the front page of the People Daily. We'll definitely be getting to get more updates on the same. Page 2 of the same speaks of union steps up a fight on SRC over pay demands, and unions want commission disbanded or disbanded, yes, for overlooking their plight while making the decision that affect them, or the decisions that affect them. This also we'll be looking at as we get to understand just how best an SRC would be able to manage its office at this point in time, when there are also these arguments that members of parliament should have their allowances scrapped off, but at the same time they've managed to have this conversation with the SRC and the necessary adjustments made. We'll be looking at this and so much more as captured on these papers this morning. And yes, let's take a look at what has been prepared by my team briefly, and perhaps later on to look at just how the roads would be looking alike. And legendary Kenyan marathoner and two-time Olympic marathon champion, that is Eliud Kipchoge, earlier broke his own world record after finishing the Berlin Marathon, first to set a new world record. And this, of course, was the fourth time Kipchoge was winning the Berlin Marathon, as he went level with Ethiopia's great Haile Gebrselassie in winning the competition 4 times. Our sports reporter Dennis Otieno tells us how Kipchoge did it.
Let's keep an eye on the clock, just outside 2:01. Eliud is a history maker in Berlin.
Disability
yet again.
is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity,
race, Kipchoge
and from their catalog you can easily read that these are
he
professionals who are able
adding
to
that he
deliver.
aims at improving the time he recorded since he feels young, more energetic and ready to participate in the sport for more years to come.
I was planning to go to the 60-50, 60-40.
We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning the price of land.
Don't miss out.
Future still great.
Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms, from crop farming to animal keeping.
Led by President William Ruto and ODM Chairman Raila Odinga, congratulated him over his stellar performance via their social media handles.
Maybe about 5 years. Yes. Yeah. So we plant every week and we harvest every week.
Join Violet Njoki every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. as we skooma the wiki.
It's not all the time you have to read your farm. Sometimes it's of benefits.
"18 minutes behind Ethiopia's
starting this September at 8:30 p.m.
Hi and welcome to The Grind. My name is Violet Njoki.
We continue to provide the platform that aims to inform and educate on business-related matter. We are here to ask all the relevant questions on your behalf.
When it comes to a catering business, do you need licenses?
Yeah, a lot of it.
And inform you what is happening in the business.
According to Police County Commander Samuel Ndani, the group was responding to a banditry attack in Mariat village on Saturday morning before meeting their death. Area Governor Jeremiah Lemurukai has sent his condolences to the family of the bereaved and called for immediate action to be taken against the perpetrators.
Fear is rife in Kamuge area, Turkana East, following a banditry attack that led to the death of 10 people, including 7 GSU officers, a chief from Napei Tom area, and a former executive officer in Samburu County. According to Police County Commander Samuel Ndani, the group that was from Lokori area were responding to a banditry attack in Namariat village on Saturday morning before meeting their death.
Mama alikuwa naenda Kamuge kuweka amani ya Waturkana na Wapokot.
waliingia kwa ambush ya Pokot na wakaua huyo mama.
Askari ambayo wamekuja kuokoa watu hao wanauliwa. Sasa askari wakiuliwa, wale ambao wamekuja kuchunga watu, sasa ni watu nani sasa watachunga watu?
Those who sustained serious injuries from the attack, including one police officer, were admitted to Lodwar Referral Hospital's ICU unit.
Right now the patient is stable. He is a male of 37 years old and is stable now and ready for evacuation because he requires a cardiothoracic surgeon whom we do not have in Lodwar County Referral Hospital.
Area Governor Jeremiah Lomorukai has sent his condolences to the families of the bereaved and called for immediate action to be taken against the perpetrators.
Our need it to be addressed. We've lost a greater population of the people of Turkana East. We've lost serious personnel, security personnel, who are committed to deliver in protecting the lives of our people.
A police helicopter visited the attack site and transported bodies of the deceased GSU officers to Nairobi. Security is tight in the area as investigations into the attack are currently ongoing. Banditry attacks have become rife in the area. Less than 1 month ago, 10 residents were burnt alive in a similar attack in Napeitom village. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
Out of 23 Esol counties, with the situation threatening to leave at least 4 million people without food by December this year. Mandera County Governor Eden Khalif urging President William Ruto to declare drought a national disaster. Andrin Kilemi reports.
Samburu County is among the 20 Esol counties experiencing the devastating effects of drought that has continued to ravage some parts of the country. In Samburu East, livestock die every single day, with human beings at a risk of hunger and starvation. The worsening household food security situation has resulted in acute malnutrition rates in the county, further affecting children aged between 6 months to 5 years.
Hii jilali vile tunaonelea hata vile inatafuta binadamu, na hii ndio maisha tunaishi naye. Sasa ukiangalia familia ni kubwa.
Speaking early Sunday, Mandera County Governor Adan Khalif urged President William Ruto to declare drought a national disaster, saying the situation has affected education in the area as hungry students cannot concentrate in schools.
The World Meteorological Organization has predicted that the 5th rainy season is likely to fail. This is a life-threatening prediction for the pastoralist communities and their livelihood. The number of people in need of humanitarian assistance is currently at 500,000. This translates to half of Mandera County population. Therefore, I appeal to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, President William Ruto, to declare the drought a national disaster.
Counties already in the alarm phase of drought include Laikipia, Tana River, Tharaka Nithi, Isiolo, Mandera, Garissa, Turkana, Wajir, Samburu and Marsabit. Another 10 counties including Embu, Kitui, Makueni, Meru, Narok, Nyeri, Taita Taveta, Kwale and Kilifi are in the alert drought phase. The remaining 3 counties, including Baringo, West Pokot and Lamu, are in the normal drought phase.
We need more hand to be extended, especially this period of September is the most critical period, the most dangerous period for both human and even livestock.
Statistics from the National Drought Management Authority indicating that at least 4.65 million Kenyans will be in dire need of food by December this year should the rains fail. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
people have allegedly died and several others lost sight after consuming illicit brew in Sianyi village, Mbeere North sub-county in Embu County. Mbeere North Member of Parliament Geoffrey Ruku has, however, accused the police officers from Siakago Police Station of colluding with operators of illicit brew. This story was produced by Andre Juma.
In Sianyi village, Mbeere North sub-county, Embu County, the illicit brew has claimed the lives of 3, with reports emerging that others have lost their sight.
Sasa jana tukashikwa na pumbwazi ya kwamba tulishikwa na pumbwazi kubwa wakati tulisikia tumepoteza watu 3. Mmoja akiwa my cousin anaitwa Ngarao, mwingine mwalimu alikuwa ananisomesha Kitibora anaitwa Bwana Kang'ethe na wengineo. Pia mwingine mmoja tukapeleka hospitali jana, mimi nilikuwa kwanza, anaitwa Njagi, cousin yangu kutoka huko hapa Sianyi ambaye amepoteza macho.
Residents of Sianyi complained that unlicensed bars had mushroomed in the area, and this had presented itself as a big problem to the youth and school-going children.
Tumejaribu kuongea na serikali watuondolee hizi bar, kwa sababu hizi bar zinauza pombe ambao si halali. Ile ambayo tunasikia inatengenezwa hapa Siakago na watu fulani wale ambao wako hapa. Tulikuwa wakati mwingine na mfurugano kubwa wakati polisi wa Siakago walishindwa na kutoa hiyo pombe hapa. Tukakuwa na polisi kutoka Embu wakuja wakatoa hiyo pombe tena hapa. Nyuma wenyewe wakaanza pia kuuza baada ya wiki moja. Sasa tunashindwa tukiwa wakazi wa Sianyi. Kwani tumekuwa namna gani hapa?
The area member of parliament, Geoffrey Ruku, has threatened to lead a peaceful demonstration if the security apparatus will not intervene.
But if the police are the one breaking the law, then we need a very serious cleanup as far as this area is concerned. We will not want to have, a very confrontational approach.
Tunalilia serikali yetu tukufu, aswa ile tulichagua ya Kenya Kwanza ya Ruto, ikuja itutetee na kupuja angalia maneno, kwa sababu wako hapa wengi sana, hakuna kazi wanatufanyia.
Mbeere North Deputy County Commissioner Ann Mitema has, however, dismissed claims that the deaths were caused by alcohol, adding that a post-mortem will have to be carried out to ascertain the cause of death.
We want to hear things are different within 3 days from today. If that is not going to happen, we will come. Hawa wanabiashara wanafanya kazi pamoja, wanauza hizo pombe pamoja na security team hapa Siakago. Kwa hivyo tunasema jameni, wakati wa kufanya maneno olera ilikuwa ya serikali hiyo nyingine ambayo imepita. Hii serikali tunataka maneno ifanywe kwa njia ambayo iko sawa sawa.
10 farm workers at George's farm in Maimahiu in Nakuru County are lucky to be alive after 14 elephants invaded the farm Saturday, leaving mass destruction to crop. Our reporter Willie Dennis Jiru with this story.
Crop destruction in this 40-acre piece of land depicts a real picture of human-wildlife conflict. A herd of 14 stray elephants sending fear to residents.
I was called early this morning by the farm manager, who told me some herd of elephants had invaded the farm. So I called the forest police and I called KWS, and I took my sons and we came here. KWS did come with a chopper, and they were able to chase away 13 of the elephants, and they're still, as I just talked to the warden, and they're still taking them back to the forest. So he said he might not be able to come back because there's still one more stray elephant.
The herd, suspected to have migrated from Owasso in Narok County, are said to have caused a massive destruction to other farms before landing here. So far, KWS officers have repulsed 13 out of 14 elephants to the forest.
Because I'm sure the animals didn't just walk overnight. They've been walking for a couple of days maybe, because it's far. Where they're going back is far. So maybe there's a way they can monitor them because they have the mechanism.
The invasion of the elephants in the area has been associated with the drought situation in the area, prompting the elephants herd to wander for greener pastures.
It's a drought. There's a lot of drought going on in the country. So I'm sure they are looking for green pastures where they can eat, where they can, and I'm sure it's a drought that's affecting them. Otherwise, we've never ever in the many years I've been farming here, we've never had issues with elephants.
However, the KWS have been put on the spot for failing to adequately contain the elephants, as compensations remains a quagmire.
So they have to do something. They can contain those animals. If they put up electric fences around the parks, the animals, like they've done at Nairobi National Park. You have a Selene right there, and the animals are not able to pass the electric fence. So they have the resources, they can do that also. Put electric fences around the parks, so the animals stop coming into our farms.
They say that elephants do not forget their paths. A stray of 14 elephants did a massive destruction to this farm, with calls to the KWS to ensure that the animals are safe and subdued. Reporting for TV 47 from Maimahiu in Nakuru County, I'm Willie Dennis Njiru.
Well, thanks, Willie, for that. Now, sawmillers in Nakuru have called on the government to lift the ban on moratoriums on logging in a bid to spur an economic revival of the sector. The multi-billion shilling sector has collapsed after the government imposed a moratorium in 2018, blocking millers from harvesting trees from gazetted forests.
According to Timber Manufacturers Association Treasurer Zakayo Maina, the move will create more jobs for residents in the county who are fully dependent on the trade.
Sasa tunataka tuwe na ile kitu tunaita bottom up na hii shamba system. Hata hawa watu wasaidiwe na kuni ili kila mtu awe na pesa mfukoni. Na tukiwa na pesa mfukoni, hata hali ya kufanya uhalifu itakuwa imedidimia kwa njia hii na ile nyingine.
Speaking in Nakuru, Maina, while welcoming the move by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua on reverting to the shamba system, said that the move will boost food production in the country as well as create more jobs.
Mimi najua hii serikali mpya itatuangalia ili tu revive hii kazi yetu, hii industry yetu ya bao na tuendelee na ile shamba system na maneno itakuwa mzuri.
According to Maina, despite planting trees and preserving the forest, the introduction of the moratorium was a surprise that led to the loss of millions of shillings.
Sasa, it is more than 2 billion. What we had invested in this farm was a lot of money, but now it's just a shell, which is very bad.
Maina said allowing people to engage in the shamba system will be beneficial to locals who are dependent on the program for the livelihood, sentiments echoed by Joseph Magara, one of the lumberjacks in Nakuru.
Wale walisema wanapanda miti, hakuna miti imepandwa. There is a big backlog katika forest zetu katika hii nchi yetu. Na sasa ndio tunasema serikali ambayo iko iruhusu wananchi waingie huko tulime na tuingie katika ile shamba system. Watu watakuwa na chakula, watakuwa na maharagwe, watakuwa na mahindi, na watakuwa na shida ya kusema ati wanataka unga ya shilingi 90, wanataka unga ya 100, wanataka unga kwa sababu mtu ako na ile chakula. Sasa ukiwa na chakula wewe umeshimba.
Kwa hivyo tungependa serikali iweze kutishikilia na ishikilie nchi yote. Manake sasa serikali yenye tuko naye tunasema na president wa nchi yetu anasema kuanzia chini tuinue watu kutoka chini kwenda juu.
Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
And the Supreme Court will today release a detailed judgment on why it upheld President William Ruto's victory and why Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga's case failed. The much-awaited ruling by Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party leader Raila Odinga is expected to give a blow-by-blow account of why the Azimio One Kenya Coalition case was faulted and why the judges dismissed it as hot air. Odinga, who has protested against the ruling, has threatened to lead mass demos for the removal of the 7 Apex Court judges.
All eyes will be on Azimio One Kenya Coalition leader Raila Odinga on Monday, when the Supreme Court releases its detailed judgment, explaining why it upheld President William Ruto's victory, while dismissing Odinga's petition as hot air and lacking merit.
This also turned out to be no more than hot air, and we were taken on a wild goose chase.
Odinga, while in Mombasa early last week, threatened to lead demos against the 7 Supreme Court judges, describing the ruling as judicial shame,
while accusing the court of dictatorship for attempting to silence Azimio despite criticism in some quarters.
We want to wait to see what this detailed ruling is going to be about.
Odinga's diehard supporters are still opposed to the ruling, despite the country moving on 3 weeks after the verdict. The Azimio leader says the judgment has given him a new platform to fight for democracy, putting the Supreme Court and IEBC on notice.
We can lead a 1 million march to the judiciary to say, "Kwendeni nyumbani." And they would have no choice but to go home. So the judiciary should not threaten, blackmail the people of this country after they have done the message that they've done.
In what will be a written judgment, the 7 Supreme Court judges will be answering the key 8 issues framed by the court in detail on why Azimio's case fell flat for lack of credible evidence, why IEBC was exonerated from misdeeds in managing the poll, whether the election was interfered with, and Ruto's victory meeting the 50% plus 1 constitutional threshold, in which the court was in consonance with IEBC. Apul Kamau, TV47.
Now, and after jetting back into the country, President William Ruto convened an interdenominational prayer and thanksgiving service at a State House in Nairobi Sunday, led by Bishop Mark Kariuki. This follows after his inauguration as the country's 5th head of state 2 weeks ago. Moige William with that story.
President William Ruto is redefining the relationship between the church and the state. The president, accompanied by the First Lady Rachel Ruto, hosting a Thanksgiving service bringing together a number of evangelical churches, and presided over by Bishop Mark Kariuki. The service held on Sunday is first of its kind to be held at State House since President Ruto took over the presidency after his swearing in on September 13th. Also present were Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, his wife, and other Kenya Kwanza leaders.
We have laid out good plans, and I can see there is light at the end of the tunnel. Things are difficult, but we will succeed because we have God on our side.
President Ruto attributed his win in the August 9 general election to the work of God.
There are people who are still recovering even today from our win. They never imagined this was possible.
First Lady Rachel Ruto revealed similar ceremonies of Thanksgiving prayer service will be held on a regular basis, adding that it will be a monthly event.
You will be coming here month after month to give thanks to the Lord because he has done us good. When the Lord answers your prayer, you go to give thanks. And will not give thanks just once, but will keep coming to this altar that the fathers have laid today here in State House.
On his part, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has called upon the church to pray for him as he strives to fit into President William Ruto's shoes as the Deputy President under President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying that Ruto set extremely high standards while acting as Deputy President.
Work has to be done, and it's only God's hand that will help him through. It is not easy. We have a difficult situation.
Ruto took the oath of office on September 13th and later traveled to New York, where he made his inaugural address at the 77th UN General Assembly. This was after the president attended Queen Elizabeth II's funeral in the United Kingdom. During his visit to New York, Ruto met US President Joe Biden. Moige William, TV47.
Now, the county government of Busia is ready to deal with an Ebola outbreak should it occur. This is according to Area Governor Paulo Tuoma, who says already the county has set aside an area to quarantine Ebola patients should the border town have any case. Now, Tuoma, who was speaking during his visit to the Kenya-Uganda border, urged residents to be extra careful and report any suspected cases to the nearest health facility. And that is as of Friday evening, Uganda had recorded a total of 11 confirmed Ebola cases, 25 patients and 11 deaths.
So nimeongea na afisa huyu hapa ambapo nimetua kigafla na kuona tu ni vipi wamejihami, na amenieleza kwamba wana pale ile electronic screening ambayo inachukua the first thing kama kuna symptoms ni mambo ya temperature ambao wanachukua hapo, alafu ikiwa temperature ambayo iko juu zaidi wamenieleza kwamba wana isolate those particular individuals and do maybe further tests on them. So and they have an isolation room from what he has told me. Na hapa Busia umejua pia tuna ile bado disaster isolation center ambayo tulikuwa nayo wakati wa COVID pale Alupe, ambayo tumeelezwa kwamba pia wameweka tayari just in case of anything. Lakini pia tutaomba kwamba ile activities wanafanya hapa zinafaa ziwe synchronized na jirani wetu huku upande ya Uganda, kwa sababu huku nafikiria wanapata tu report kutoka kule Mubende ambapo the first cases zimekuwa reported.
The Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU, has blamed the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, for what it terms as harassment towards its workers. While speaking to the media in Nairobi, COTU officers led by Lamek Abrahams asked President William Ruto to scrap off SRC. The trade union, which is led by Secretary General Francis Atwoli, has pointed a blaming finger to SRC, alleging that the workers receive their wages late. This comes as SRC Wednesday held a long meeting with members of parliament in which the legislators put their foot down, describing the scrapping of allowances as unacceptable.
However, what has so far been said is at strategic level. The Swahili saying goes, nguruwe ama mkuki kwa nguruwe ni utamu, lakini kwa mwanadamu ni uchungu. I want to put SRC on notice that hii mkuki inakuja kwa SRC. Sote ni Wakenya na tuwastahili kuheshimiwa. Kila mtu ana tumbo na sijaona aliye na tumbo upande wa nyuma.
Frustrated by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. By itself is a creature of the law. How come then it is the same body that violates the law? That's why we are saying it must go.
Hatutakubali uwezo wetu kanyangiwe chini na watu wanaitwa SRC. Hiyo imefika mwisho. Wafanyikazi wanasema sisi tunataka haki zetu. Haki yetu ni marupurupu yetu, mshahara yetu, maisha yetu, na pamoja tunakaa na tunaendelea. Tuko pamoja. SRC must go.
Education stakeholders are saying it is too late to discard the competency-based curriculum since there are learners who have studied under the new curriculum for 6 years. Their sentiments coming at a time when President William Ruto promised Kenyans that his government will set up a task force to look into the challenges experienced with the curriculum. And as many are confused as to which direction the CBC will take, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has assured Kenyans that the curriculum will not be scrapped off. Here is our senior education reporter Sharon Baranga with a story.
It has been 6 years since the implementation of the competency-based curriculum CBC began in the country, but many parents are yet to grasp what the CBC is all about. For instance, parents of learners at Kari Primary School in Kisii County are concerned with the direction the new curriculum is taking. Most of them confessing that they do not understand the most important aspects of the curriculum, even though their children are at a stage where they are preparing to join junior secondary school in 2023.
Tuko na changamoto kwa sababu saa zingine sisi kama wazazi huwa tunachanganyikiwa kwa sababu hatujaelewa kuhusu hii CBC sasa.
Kwa CBC vile mwenzangu alisema ni kama inachanganya kidogo. Hatujaielewa vizuri.
Tayari tuko na PP1 na PP2 ambayo haikukuweko. Je, tutaendelea na hiyo? Pili ni wale wanafunzi ambao wanatoka katika primary kuenda junior secondary wa kidato cha 6. Je, wametoshea umri wa kuenda sekondari na wanaweza kuenda mashule za mbali? Na je, tutaendelea kukuwa na hizi shule ambazo za nationals
ama tutarudi kukuwa na shule za day schools, tutoe shule za mabweni. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka kuambia Wakenya wote wajitayarishe kutoa maoni kuhusu hiyo CBC. Lakini njia ni mbili tu ama tatu. Either tuibakishe vile ilivyo saa hizi, ama tuiondoe kabisa, ama tuipige msasa ili iweze kuingizwa ndani ya 844.
Since its inception, implementation of the CBC has suffered teething issues, with some education stakeholders dismissing the curriculum, saying it was rushed. Parents weighed in on the matter, claiming the curriculum was too complex and expensive. Some even called for the removal of the curriculum, but the government remained adamant that CBC was here to stay.
This is actually the way to go, so that when a child leaves school in after Form 4, you don't have to be saying, oh, I passed to go to university. Which university? You go and create a company and employ the beggars who went to university and employ hundreds of them. Because you will be talented, you'll be a film director, you'll be a music director, and you can be employing the Magoha's grandchildren at about 1% of your income or even less. That's the life that our children must now consider, rather than saying, let me pass well so that I go to the university, so that I get a certificate, so that I stay for 20 years, so that I can get a job. I think that's a bit stupid, don't you think so?
What does it mean to operationalize CBC? Because the intention of CBC is good, but what does it really take for us to achieve CBC? So it's not just enough to say that we really want to implement CBC, but do we have the intention to put in what it takes for us to achieve CBC?
To tweak and do certain things, that's not now my business. Are we together? For example, if they were to say that, okay, let CBC be only in day schools, or as long as CBC is there, because my main concern has been that leave CBC alone, because in my considered opinion, it has brought the children back. Parents, there is a conversation between the parents and the children.
Last year, former President Uhuru Kenyatta appointed Professor Fatuma Chege to head the new state department in the Ministry of Education that would oversee the implementation of the CBC. The task force was set up to look into the issues affecting the delivery of the CBC.
Which, of course, the bigger report has never been put public, and that also raises a lot of concerns. The task force took too long, close to 2 years, before its report was out. And again, when the report was out, it was full of recommendations, so many of them, and you wouldn't really tell where to start or not. So some of us have argued that perhaps the task force failed to provide a very, very solid framework of how to move on. Because if you just provide many recommendations, I think there are more than 100 recommendations. You don't know whether to implement recommendation number 68 or that configuration of recommendation number 46, 78, and maybe 105. It becomes a big issue.
Is a practical curriculum. Na tunahitaji hiyo practicability katika generation ile tunaishi. Lakini pia tunahitaji kuangalia implementation yake. Na kitu ya kwanza ni kuangalia kuweka resources zile zitafanya CBC ikuwe inafanyika bila wasiwasi, kwa sababu CBC saa hizi vile iko inagawanya wa maskini na watu wale wadosi, simply because shule za kawaida haziwezi pata mahali ya kucheza basketball, haziwezi pata mahali penye wako napata hizi resources zile zinahitajika kwa applicability ya hiyo CBC curriculum. Lakini tunahitaji serikali ikae chini iweke resources kwa shule ili kusikue na shida ya implementation ya CBC.
BAMBA anakuwa amri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi yote ya ulinzi ya Kenya.
In his speech immediately after being sworn in as president, William Ruto promised Kenyans that his government will set up a task force to look into the challenges experienced with the curriculum. His deputy Rigathi Gachagua has assured Kenyans that the curriculum will not be scrapped off.
Our new government will very soon be unveiling a task force to look at educational reforms, including CBC, with a view not of abolishing it, but reviewing it so that we retain what is good and improve what is causing concern. So we ask the people of Kenya, when that team is unveiled and is going around the country, please don't just complain at home and in the market centers. Turn up and present your views of what you think should be done to improve CBC and the entire educational center.
Public participation is critical in this matter. I will establish an education reform task force in the presidency, which will be launched in the coming weeks. It will collect views from all players in line with the constitutional demand of public participation, and we are particularly alive to the anxieties of parents on the twin transition of the last 844 class and the first CBC class in January next year. I assure all that there will be a solution to the matter before then.
To come, we share. We have all
The Kenya Publishers Association, KPA, has asked President William Ruto to move with speed and appoint a task force that will review the competency-based curriculum and give recommendation on the curriculum. The association wants to be part of the task force appointed by President Ruto if the need arises.
We as Kenya Publishers Association had already prepared a memorandum, and what we are doing today is to continue gathering more views so that we can strengthen it. The moment that task force is appointed, we shall present that memorandum. And we also look forward to actually being part of that task force, because we are key stakeholders in the area of curriculum, rollout, implementation. We have done books right from PP1 through to grade 7.
The publishers say there is need for President Ruto to retain CBC, saying education system needs regular changes after every 5 to 10 years.
I want to mention just 3 areas that we feel should be looked into. One is training, intensive, let me call it, intensive training of teachers on CBC. Training was done. But from the views that we have gathered from the teachers that we work with, especially those who have written books, it could have been better. We believe that from what we have gathered, it was done through what we may call a crash program. So if it is more intensive, teachers will have the opportunity to understand, appreciate CBC, and therefore, even at class level, they will deliver better. Another area, and I mentioned it, is the sensitization of the general public, and especially the parents. The parents have been demonizing CBC, especially on social media, and we do not blame them. We say we are also parents, and we know the work that sometimes our learners bring home. But the sensitization should be in the sense that let us appreciate that learning does not start and end in the classroom.
Kwa hivyo sisi kama KUPPET tumeuliza kwamba tuweze kupewa slot katika hiyo task force ili tuweze kutoa maoni yetu kama walimu. Lakini naweza kusema hivi, sio tu maoni ya walimu, lakini tunataka maoni ya Wakenya wote na washikadau wote. Wawe ni wazazi, wawe ni walimu, wawe ni wale watu ambao wako katika idara mbalimbali, lakini tusahau pia maoni ya wanafunzi wenyewe. Sababu hakuna elimu ama curriculum yoyote ya elimu ambayo inaweza faulu kama haitakubalika na serikali, haitakubalika na wanafunzi, haitakubalika na wazazi, haitakubalika na walimu, na pia haitakubalika na wananchi kwa jumla. Kwa hivyo hii task force itawezesha sisi kuweka maoni yetu pamoja ili kuweza kujua tutaenda mbele namna gani.
On the other hand, universities have been challenged to employ their expertise in research to help improve education systems that include the competency-based curriculum.
Perhaps it is high time that when the task force will be going round, University of Embu should not be left behind to give its views, the views from philosophical point of view, because when you are conceiving an education system, the philosophy under which you conceive it is very important.
There are a few things that need to be really structured, and one of it has to be, how do we really look at what we want to implement in terms of the curriculum reforms? I think the debate on the education that we want must still be active. It must never stop. We must sit in town halls. It's a normative discussion. We cannot make it a positivist that it has to work this way or the other way. We must continue engaging at all times, continue engaging universities and faculties of education, different teacher training institutions to really get involved in terms of really understanding what is it that we are putting on the table in terms of curriculum reform.
Meanwhile, education stakeholders are saying it is too late to scrape off the new curriculum since there are learners who have studied under it for 6 years. They instead advise the government to look at the issues affecting the curriculum and focus on finding solutions.
In the teacher-pupil ratio, because the CBC is an approach which requires almost some individual attention, we are trying our level best. But if we could improve that ratio, then at least we'll be good to go.
Masuala ambayo yanaweza kuangaliwa ni jinsi ya kuweza kufanya ile assessment, how they are assessing the learners, because the mode of assessment probably could be not favoring some of the learners.
Tunatarajia wanafunzi wa shule za msingi kujiunga nasi, lakini changamoto tulio nayo ni kwamba hatujapewa vifaa maalum vya kuweza kupokea watoto.
Mfumo huu ulianzishwa na umeenda mpaka grade ya 6 na hauwezi kutupiliwa tu mbali hivyo, kwa sababu watoto hawa waliosoma watapelekwa wapi na hawana chochote pengine, na yale masomo yametolewa, vitabu ilitolewa. Kwa hivyo ni mbinu tu mwafaka inatakana kutafutwa.
As members of parliament, we are going to put our foot down and make sure that we are going to look into this issue of CBC and make some amendments, and if need be, we scrap it all together and refer back to the 844 system.
In 2023, the pioneer class of the CBC will be joining junior secondary schools. Sharon Baranga, TV47.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that report. And from that beat, allow us to take a quick short break, and then we'll be introducing the gentlemen that help us decipher on these matters that are, of course, considered to be current affairs right here in the country. So don't you go anywhere.
TV47, the home of untold stories. Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression.
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games, you have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning price of land.
Don't miss out. Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms, from crop farming to animal keeping.
They're very hardy insects, yeah? The larvae is a very hardy insect.
We look forward to having an optimum production in maybe about 5 years. Yes. Yeah.
So we plant every week and we harvest every week.
Join Violet Njoki every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. as we skooma the wiki.
It's not all the time you have to read your farm. Sometimes it's of benefit.
Starting this September at 8:30 p.m.
Hi and welcome to The Grind. My name is Violet Njoki.
We continue to provide the platform that aims to inform and educate on business-related matter. We are here to ask all the relevant questions on your behalf.
When it comes to a catering business, do you need licenses?
Yeah, a lot of it.
And inform you what is happening in the business arena. Be sure to stay tuned.
All week, you look forward to the weekend. And we are here to help you make the most of it. Catch me, Karen Karini, on Fridays. And with me, Muthoni Maina, on the weekend.
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
bipolar,
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
and even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7 TV47, the home of untold stories.
Coal is one of the most abundant fossil fuels in the world. For decades, its mining has contributed to the growth of certain African nations. Other countries like Kenya have lately proposed coal as a possible alternative source of power, including mining and production.
As you see, all developed countries, they've used this source of energy because it is the cheapest of them all, from hydro and other sources of energy. And it is the most reliable because coal is available in Kenya and in most of African countries.
However, coal projects have been met with a lot of controversies from local
Watching TV47, the home of untold stories.
And my poster reads that we'll be having 3 gentlemen on set, but as of now, only one has managed to be here. The others are saying they're somewhere on the way. We cross fingers that they make it here. I know Mondays can be tough in Nairobi, and I'll definitely hope that they're out and almost getting to this space. But the gentlemen that we have on set equally able to discuss some of the matters that we'll be looking at, and therefore I am not worried at all if we are to run this show with him alone. But I promise that at least 1-2 of the others would be here any moment from now. Agostino Neto is former Member of Parliament Dewa, but equally co-party leader, United Green Movement. It's good to have you, Sini. How are you?
Thank you very much, and it's nice being on set after many months.
Yes.
And after an election that was pretty interesting.
Right.
We went into the election as Greens, as the United Green Movement. We were lucky to get 1 or 2 seats, but we didn't do as much as we could have gotten. But we've already started working for the 2027 elections. And for us as Greens, we knew that 2022 was not going to be an election about ideology. We tried to push in a green ideology, a green agenda, feminism, issues that Kenyans might not have had for a very long time. So we hope that in 2027 they will resonate with the Kenyans and we'll get a few more seats. So we look forward to the 2027 elections already.
All the best. I mean, Green has done so well to get at least 2 seats, like you rightfully put it, yeah? Not an easy one, especially in this space where it's a game of coalitions, and most importantly, also there are those ones that really have dominated, and you know, it appeared like it was a 2-horse race. But Green was under Azimio by any chance? Yes?
No. We went.
It was just Green.
We went as Greens.
Okay.
We went as Greens because we thought that the more it was looking different, the more it was the same. I mean, and you saw slightly after the elections, immediately after the elections, those who were in Azimio quickly went to Kenya Kwanza, and those who were in Kenya Kwanza not so sure what they wanted to do. So we thought that, you know, if we pushed out a green agenda out there, if we pushed in a few ideologies out there, it would be a better brand, to build a better brand, as opposed to hanging up. You know, most of the people hang up on either Kenya Kwanza or Azimio to get elected, which is a very bad way of defrauding Kenyans. You know, you cannot defraud the electorates and then in a few days you quickly change sides. It speaks something about your character. Right. As Greens, we'd agreed to form a post-election coalition. You know, we had thought that, you know, whatever assembly, for example, if it's in Busia, if it's in Tana River, we thought that we would be working with those various assemblies to push through the Green Manifesto, you know, give ideas. We had ideas on the environment, we had ideas on, employment, we had ideas on youth issues. So we want to work closely with those members of the county assemblies who've been elected to give them ideas, because our manifesto was to help build Kenya. It was not a green manifesto, it was a manifesto for the people of Kenya. So if you can work with these people in the post-election coalition, we'll be adding our value, as opposed to having sat there, took a very negative stance, and now have the manifesto wait for 5 years. So we want to work on ways of implementing the manifesto these 5 years with these parties that have been elected.
All right, it would be much disappointing to have these two that have been elected under Green decide to shift gears and perhaps sell the agenda or advance the agenda of a certain party. In this case, most of them that are shifting gears are those ones that are going to the ruling party. Perhaps the fear of being outside government, but I don't know whether this is just being outside government as one would want to look at it. But don't you think it's quite unfortunate that we have this shift? And beyond character, what does it speak in terms of the laws that we have? While there are others that are trying to justify this, they say in the Constitution, there is that clause that speaks of freedom of association. And therefore, perhaps these members of parliament, these leaders that have been elected under different parties crossing or shifting allegiance to the other side is really not a bad thing. Just how much can they justify this, looking at the other laws that are there to back what the Constitution says?
I say, first of all, people run for elections so that at least they deliver on campaign promises. And the way the African construct of elections has been that, you know, if you're not with the political party in power, then you look like you've lost on it. But I think to strengthen our democracy, Kenya needs a robust opposition. You know, what makes a country work are what you want to call inclusive political institutions. So if, for example, we have a good president, but you do not have a strong opposition, that president might also go gaga. You know, he might just go out of control. So you really need a constant opposition that is going to keep them in check. So it is not proper. You know, the way the Kenyan Constitution was designed is that the House of Parliament in its entirety is supposed to be checking on the president. So there is no way a member of parliament can be, even if he was of Kenya Kwanza, even if of Azimio, they're not supposed to be in bed with the president. They're supposed to be checking the president. They're supposed to be asking hard questions, you know, taking care of the budget. You know, the Kenyan debt is right now spiraled. You cannot be in Kenya Kwanza or in Azimio and want to help the president push the debt burden, because then you lose on your oversight role, you lose on your checking space. So it is not about, because President President Ruto was in Kenya Kwanza. Now you think you're a Kenya Kwanza member of parliament or member of the Senate. Now you want to support his agenda, especially if at all it does not make sense. You're supposed to be criticizing it. You're supposed to be asking questions. That is the structure of the Kenyan constitution, that every member of parliament is supposed to be having an oversight role. But I think most from the previous houses of parliament, and even what we're seeing right now, most of them want to be seen to be kowtowing what the presidency wants, which is really, really the wrong thing. I mean, I like what the judiciary has done.
Right.
That the judiciary has shown both of its two sides. You know, sometimes it has decided for the presidency, sometimes it has decided against the presidency. That is what a check and a balance system is ought to do in a presidential construct of a constitution. So I think it's a good thing. So the members of parliament who've since defected to Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, I really think that. It's good to be enticed, and I saw the deputy president say that some of them were in those little coalitions because they were being pushed. But it speaks to the content of character. It speaks to what you want to, your ideals as a person. Because, I mean, for us Greens, we chose not to be with Azimio or Kenya Kwanza because we thought the ideas we have, you know, like we have environment ideas, we have gender ideas, we have youth ideas, and we wanted to discuss this with someone else who's in government to push that particular agenda. So we did not campaign, we did not run on anyone's wind. You know, we didn't want anyone else's wind to be now part of our sail. So we wanted to be Greens, standing on the platform of ideology, and now we are happy to give it to the Azimio governor in Busia, my friend Otuoma, or give it to the Kenya Kwanza governor in what part of the country, so that at least these ideas that we had can now be used for purposes of developing Kenya. But we did not want to be part of this games of coalitions before the elections.
But then again, we really need to get to a space where we speak of our parties. And this is one of the things that I had really wished for us to discuss, that is as pertaining to, you know, just how best we get formidable parties that would not just appear as outfits that are used to take, you know, politicians from point A to point B to win the presidency, to lose the election. And once that is done, in 5 years, we have a different conversation altogether. In as much as there's Greens, there's this conversation that, and I mean, questions linger as to whether then the Kenya Kwanza coalition, the UDA party, will hold up until, you know, the next election. We definitely are looking at the squabbles and scrambles that lie therein in ODM and as well as Azimio. Questions are out here as to what are the possibilities that these parties then would hold. I mean, especially when parties are about faces, specific individuals. When you look at this and the past that we come from, the spaces that we come from, the parties that have held not just in Kenya but across the African continent, what would you make as to what then you intend to form as the Greens?
I think the question that you ask is a very good question. The problem with the African elections, and the only country that you see surviving for some time, is South Africa and the ANC. You know, so the reason why the ANC has survived in South Africa for some time, and of course now Malema's EFF is coming up. You know, there was the Democratic Alliance in South Africa as well that tried, because in South Africa and in Rwanda, you have an electoral system that is different from what we have in Kenya and what we have in Tanzania or what we have in Uganda. You see, what you have in Kenya is a method of election called first past the post. But in South Africa and in Rwanda, you have a proportional representation system. Uganda, you have a mixed proportional system. I will explain to you those three, what is the difference and why Kenya really needs a proportional representation system. Yeah. You see, if you have a proportional representation system like you have in South Africa, people go to the ballot to vote for a political party. It simply means that, you know, you've bought into the ideals of ANC, you've bought into the thoughts of the Democratic Alliance, or you've bought into the ideals of EFF. You know, Malema is selling this economic emancipation and the space of Africans and Pan-Africanism. So if that's the space he's selling, most of people will go to the ballot to vote for that particular idea. In Kenya, there's not been an idea. The idea is either Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta or William Ruto and stuff like that. All right. Even if you want to break down if you want to look at Raila's previous elections or Uhuru Kenyatta's election, because now William Ruto, it's still too early to judge him. We still do not know how much of his bottom-up is really going to be bottom-up. You notice that Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency struggled midway. You know, the thoughts and aspirations of what they brought in the Big Four agenda. I think there was even no agenda in the first place.
Yeah.
I think what it did is it left us with the bet-laden country, unemployment spiraled, and there was basically nothing apart from the lead that we saw. So if Kenya needs to move forward and to have politics of the basis of ideology, then we really need to have a proportional representation system. And that is what is actually going to sort out Kenya's problem. The Supreme Court has done very well with regard to giving the country hope. You know, the 2022 election was, of course, definitely better than 2017. Why? Because the Supreme Court did set in space how to make the election better in terms of being credible, in terms of the electronic transfer, the electronic identification. But there is how much you can do, especially if an election was going to be too closely contested like what we watched. You know, the difference between William Ruto and Raila Odinga was about 230,000 votes. That's not good. That's not good for a country. Then you have the House of Parliament. The reason why you have the battle right now in the House of Parliament in terms of majority or minority is because the lines are not very clear. The lines are not very clear in terms of what is a clear win. And that's why I think you need a proportional representation system for two reasons. One, to help us vote for ideology. That I'll be going to the ballot to vote for a green ideology. I'll be going to the ballot to vote for bottoms up. You know, some people still voted for bottoms up in this past election because it was William Ruto and Rigiji were on the ballot, but there was nothing about, if you ask them about what bottom-up is about, and you saw a couple of members of parliament struggle with what bottom-up, what really is bottom in the up, you know, so it's still not as crystallized. But Kenya has to bite the bullet. If we're going to have a constitutional amendment in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, that constitutional amendment has to be one that converses or discusses Kenya's electoral system, because that is the only thing that's going to sort us out. This one was close. We had the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins coming up to win the presidency. We do not know which tribal alliances are going to win the next presidency, but we cannot be like that as a country. We cannot be constantly shifting tribal alliances and tribal bases, because at that point, what point then will an El Molo be president of Kenya? What point will an Ogiek be the president of Kenya? If it's then going to be musical chairs of tribal alliances. So I really think that, you know, if you have a proportional representation system, then it does not matter. It doesn't matter who is going to be the leader of that particular party. The leader of Kenya Kwanza could be an El Molo or could be a Rendile. Then still end up being the president, because the political party will have been voted in by many Kenyans, will have voted into the ideology. And that is what will make our democracy work, as opposed to constantly going to the Supreme Court to look for a good judgment, especially when you've lost or won. So I really think that's what we need to do.
Well, let me ask this, Mheshimiwa. In the event that we're looking at this, and I mean the countries that you've mentioned, about 2, 3 of them, they've really not been huge on the coalition and alliance systems that we have hugely adapted here. And there is this general argument that in Kenya today, for you to win an election, it could be pretty hard for you to do that, or to successfully go through an election as one party, or without having to coalesce with other parties. And Deputy President William Ruto will tell you that he tried that by arguing that he would not want any form of coalition. The only coalition he would wish for is a coalition with Mama Mbogas, the common wananchi. But as you know, he egged closer to the ballot. He realized that there's that need to work with other people. In this space of coalitions, do you suppose then that will help us in terms of seeking to achieve the proportional representation system, or this then would lower the process or make it slower?
You see the way the Kenyan political space is right now designed, it's designed tribally, that you need a conglomeration of tribes to win the presidency. That is wrong. And that is where our problems begin. The people in Bungoma and Western Kenya were looking forward to DAPK and Ford Kenya. The people in Luo Nyanza were looking forward to ODM. So the people in Central Kenya, some of them are looking forward towards Jubilee and the other political parties there. Now, that's not how to run a country. Because then you get the country fragmented on the basis of the tribal leader who is there. So we have to look for Raila. Where is Raila in this thing? That's where the Luos are. Where is William Ruto? So it does not matter whether you're a Kalenjin with a good or a bad idea. So long as you're with William Ruto, you can dance yourself lame, you'll be elected. That's not how to run a country. And that is the reason why, if you had a proportional representation system, it will then be the basis of William Ruto, the president, and Raila Odinga, choosing the very best in their teams, having them on a party list, and then sending them out to the field to have them campaign for the basis of the ideology of the party. So it will not matter, for example, whether the person they pick in Nyeri would be a Kikuyu. But why? Because the Kikuyu is championing the ideas of Orange Democratic Movement, or the person in Kwale is championing green ideologies. Is a member of the UGM who believes in the UGM manifesto. Yeah. That's how to run a country. But if you're going to have the first past the post, that's the reason why, for example, in Rwanda, despite the fact that the President Kagame's presence is overwhelming, you will not have the tension of too much of this campaign, because you bundle yourselves into a political party. Yeah. And once you're in the political party, now you campaign for your political party on that basis of that ideology. ANC, the moment when, for example, ANC has changed its leadership, and it's so seamless, you know, when Thabo Mbeki was being removed out of office and my dancer friend was coming in, it was very seamless, because the political party has a structure. You know, like the ANC, for example, did not have to send the country into an election because the leadership of the party changed. That simply meant that the presidency then is taken over, because the structure of the party is such that you don't have to take the country to an election for you to change over leadership. So that is what the models of leadership that I think the country needs to aspire to or pick. Okay. If you don't do that, then I really think that we're going to have a bit of a problem. All
right, and I see Onchari is almost getting into this space. I'd have loved to hear his view on the same. There are questions as to whether then the survival of ODM is one that we can look forward to. Perhaps the strongest holding party in the country so far, as one would want to argue. But with a lot of shenanigans that come along and orchestrated by the fact that we've had an election. But we shelve that for a moment, and you've spoken hugely about the judiciary and the Supreme Court. Today they accord us the final rulings, or all the submissions as pertaining to why they decided to quash that petition by the Azimio One Kenya Alliance. Do you think, or do you suppose this is going to make any of a change? And looking at the fact that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga has hugely been waiting for this. He really says that he is not contented with the ruling that was given by the Supreme Court, and would wish to understand in depth just what really could have informed what it is that they made as a ruling.
Yeah, I mean, let's first of all let's give credit to the judiciary that I think, first of all, they did very well. In terms of having a unanimous decision. I spoke to a couple of people in Azimio, Kenya, when the petition was lodged. And to be honest, I think they did a bad job. They did a bad job in terms of one, of a petition, but also in terms of two, even the prosecution of the case, what they did in legal parlance was bad. I mean, I think give it to the Chief Justice used strong language, but I really think the strong language was just to show contempt in terms of in future, do not approach the court of this kind of magnitude with what you did. I mean, so I really think, yes, the language might not have been kind, might not have been friendly, but it was I mean, if you treat the Supreme Court with the contempt of what we saw from, I mean, I was hoping to get, when one viewer actually had requested me to speak to the Wakili who was blaming diaspora for being this 291 constituency. I mean, if you have advocates of the High Court go to court with this kind of jokes, the Constitution the Constitution was designed in a manner that it helps explain to you where the country wants to go, and to make mincemeat of the Constitution for purposes of camera and for purposes of just making a name for yourself. I really think that the kind of wording that CJ used was good. Call it as it is, so that at least next time, if you're an advocate worth your salt, you want to approach the Supreme Court with a bit more a modicum of respect, a bit more character, a bit more demeanor. But let's go back to my former party leader, Raila Odinga. I really think he needs to let the Supreme Court judgment rest. It does not always have to be in your favor. The reason why, as a country, we believe in the rule of law, Article 10 of the Constitution, it doesn't have to be what you want. The court brings closure, and as Greens we've argued before that the court brings closure, and sometimes in fact the court does not want to tell you what you wanted to hear. So the reason why you've given yourself to the court, the reason why he went to court in the first place, you should have expected the judgment either way, either for him or against him. When it's against you, that's the court of law.
And that's fair enough. The judges themselves acknowledge that, a presidential petition is a matter that perhaps should take longer than the stipulated days in the Constitution. And therefore they say, well, to us, we hope that in the utmost of our abilities, we're able to deliberate on this matter. You know, a matter that we've been accorded around 14 days, but we all wish and hope, and we all think this is a matter that should be looked into in about a year. And I mean, when you look at that, there's an acknowledgement that even if you'd want to present a watertight case, perhaps you are, you know, pressed of time to, you know, gather information and make sure that what it is that you present to before the courts is definitely something that is worth.
I disagree. You see, the nature of the Supreme Court case for the presidency, you notice that elections are fairly very emotive issues. There's how long you can keep the country. In fact, the 1 week was already too long.
It was too long.
I mean, every 6 days, 7 days, you see it's already too long. So there's how much you want to keep the country. But look at the structure of the Kenyan election. What was so difficult to prove? You have 46,000 agents across the country. They have to send you Form 34As. This is all you need. And that you don't need 2 weeks for you to have Form 34As. Either you have them or you don't have them.
You don't have them.
It's as simple as that. Number two, you have to then design your case in terms of what gives you results. The Supreme Court case of the presidential election is not something that you're not looking for evidence that is non-existent. It's evidence that you either have or you don't have. Like, you know, in this case, Azimio did not have the evidence.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. So if you don't have it, whether you ask for 1 year or 2 years, you simply don't have it. And, you know, when they had the evidence in 2017, the Chief Justice then found in their favor because the election then was not verifiable, it was not credible. They didn't need more than 2 weeks. So in the one election, you've been given what you wanted. In this other election, you've not been given what you wanted. What more do you want?
Okay.
I mean, let's just be fair. I mean, so that you see the belief in the rule of law, and one of the things I credit Azimio for is the fact that they helped us build jurisprudence around the Kenyan election process. That was a good thing. That, you know, the judgment that is the detailed judgment that is coming out today is going to help IBC improve its work. You know, we saw the IBC A and IBC-B. We hope that now the next IBC can be one team, because then the judgment around the Supreme Court will give detailed issues in terms of how then to work on team dynamics and a few other things. But the second thing is that it's good for Kenya's jurisprudence. I mean, the whole of Africa was looking at us, which is a good thing. I mean, it's good as a lawyer and as a practitioner of the law. It's always good. It's always good to have the court interpret the Constitution and give life and breathe life to it. So I really think that Raila Odinga's Azimio gave Kenyans a good space. It helped us build our case precedents, and I think it's a good thing. So whatever happens today, I saw his excitement with leading the 1 million people to the judiciary. I think some of these ideas are the best practice just at home. I mean,
let's not be too radical. Constitutional right as well, and we understand that then the space is open for people to hold demonstrations, if you want to call them, peaceful for that matter, and therefore we leave it at that as we look forward to see what.
But Linda, even before I let you, Alela, before I let you go on that one.
Yeah.
You see, Article 37 of the Constitution is very clear that you're free to picket, you're free to demonstrate. But the Constitution also says if you want to remove a Supreme Court judge, there's a process.
There is a process.
It's not a demonstration.
Yes.
So you're demonstrating for why? You know, so there is a space for demonstration if at all your rights are not being upheld or if they're not being heard. But if you want to remove a Supreme Court judge or you want to remove an IBC commissioner, it's not a demonstration.
Does it overpower the first article of the Constitution as well that speaks of, you know, the supremacy of course, all this being on the hands of the people? Allow us to take a short break, also loop in on Chari as well as expound on other matters. Don't you go anywhere.
You are watching TV. Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression.
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games. You have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning price of land.
Don't miss out. Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms, from crop farming to animal keeping.
They're very hardy insects, yeah? The larvae is a very hardy insect.
We look forward to having an optimum production in maybe about 5 years. Yes. Yeah.
So we plant every week and we harvest every week.
Join Violet Njoki every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. as we skooma the wiki.
It's not all the time you have to read your farm. Sometimes it's of benefit.
Starting this September at 8
to quash the petition that was presented to them, upholding the win of President William Ruto as the president of the nation. And perhaps, you know, the reason why I asked that, Neto would have thought that perhaps this is mine. This is a viewer who's asking that, you know, the constitution dictates that the sovereignty belongs, that sovereignty power is to the people, and therefore it is their right to go out there and picket in the event that they feel like there's an office that really is not representing their matters. But this is on a 50-50 basis, because there are those ones that were in support of President William Ruto, and I mean that the upholding of that win was a plus to them. And also we're looking at those ones that are supporters of the Right Honourable Raila Odinga, without hitting hard on him, or without you know, being soft on him as well. Like Neto would argue, he's done well in terms of helping us look at how well we can work on, you know, just growing our democracy by the day. And therefore that petition and the numerous petitions that he's presented at the Supreme Court before are very instrumental towards getting us, you know, acknowledging the importance of upholding the rule of law. What do you make of that as we await the final ruling, or the final representation as to why we had that ruling?
Well, thank you so much, Linda. Raila's place in the process of democratization in this country cannot be taken by anybody. That is a contribution he's made. He sacrificed for it. He's fought so hard. Sometimes through both sweat and blood. And the 2022 presidential election was for Raila Odinga to take.
Yeah.
So he was let down by his handlers, including, of course, the retired president, Uhuru Kenyatta. They lied to him. And the Raila, I know, works very hard. He works very hard. In 2007, he gave Kibaki a hard time. And according to me, Raila actually won the election of 2007. In 2013, Raila put up a very spirited fight. 2017, same thing. So when Raila is on his own and is fighting for the presidency alone, he does his best. So in 2022, I think he was lulled into believing that the presidency could be delivered to him on a silver platter. And he lost it. He lost it in a very painful way, by a very small margin. I think that is the smallest he has lost to the presidency. Yeah. And he lost it with the support of an outgoing president, which I think adds to the pain I'm sure he's going through at the moment. So even as he walks out, we recognize his contribution. is a statesman. Perhaps I think the greatest statesman living today. That much we have to give to him. And I call upon the president to treat him as such.
Why do you say as he walks out? He's not pronounced this, that really he's out of the game of politics as such. In fact, what we see is a more vibrant, one who's willing to put up another fight, and perhaps, you know, as they would say, as many would argue, don't be surprised to see him sometimes in 2027? Yeah.
Well, if you ask me, I think Raila has had his run. I know there are conmen, political conmen who want to benefit off his shoulder or his back. Anytime Raila is on the ballot, there are people going to be given free tickets and they get elected. So they'll push him, they'll add him on and, you know, waste him up. So I think it's time to hang up his boots and take his position as a statesman. And I think even as the president gave some assignments to, actually the assignments which were given to Uhuru should have been given to Raila. It's only that I think the climate was not conducive for that.
All right. But where does he leave ODM? Where does he leave the Azimio One Kenya Alliance? And we're briefly talking about parties and how to have formidable parties that hold. And Neto here giving a very important proposal as to us getting proportional representation system that would definitely work for us in comparison to what has worked, or parallel, or drawing parallels to what has really worked for other nations in Africa.
Now, I think there's a time we had a discussion about the destiny of political parties, leadership of political parties in this country. And we have a problem of not grooming leaders. Okay, you can see it as a problem because we have what we call a pipeline. A pipeline is a process through which leaders are built. As you exit, you make sure that people can move in and take your space. And that is a mistake which was made by the retired president as far as Mount Kenya is concerned. So we had so many voices coming out of Mount Kenya, and it made it very difficult for him to even galvanize and solidify support behind the former prime minister. So that is the same mistake the former prime minister has made, both in his Luo Nyanza stronghold and in party leadership. So I don't want him to focus so much on the political party he has built. I'd like him to focus on his political future as a statesman. Now, the young men and women in ODM should make it their duty to build the party and grow the democracy that exists as we speak. Obviously, ODM does not have a very good history when it comes to democracy, because if you look at the manner in which nominations were held, that is one of the reasons why Raila was not able to get his own people to actually go out and vote. When you look at the 4 counties of Luo Nyanza, Migori, Homa Bay, Kisumu, and Siaya, a total of 750,000 people never showed up to vote. That is because of the bungled nominations. You look at the 82-year-old Oburu Odinga, who was given a direct ticket to become the senator for Siaya County. You go to Homa Bay, you realize in the contest between Kidero and Gladys Wanga, the former prime minister took sides. Now, guys who wanted Kidero to become governor and felt that he was not treated fairly, most likely never voted for Raila. So that is the time I expected Raila to actually become a statesman, go there and tell them, hey, you guys, I want you to fight it out and pick the best. But for the presidency, I'm with you here.
Okay.
At that point, you know, Raila's, Gladys Wanga's supporters and Kidero supporters could have voted for Raila. And then down here, they decided to go to. And that nomination most likely could have gone to Kidero, because you realize he got 150,000 votes as an independent.
You know, Adala, this gentleman, I'm beginning to like him. You know, when he walked in, you know, he came on these platitudes. He was trying to blame everyone else who's around Raila for Raila's mistakes. I think let's blame Raila. Let's be candid, because that's the only way you help a leader. And this is part of the problems I had with Raila when I was his member of his party. Because precisely the reasons why, you know, my colleague Onchari is talking about, if Raila wanted to be president, there are 750,000 votes that were not cast in his strongholds. What was the margin? 230,000 votes. What is he supposed to have done? The simple thing that he's saying, you know, simply don't take sides. I mean, say, I want to be president. Kidero is my son, Wanga is my daughter. People fight it out. turn out in large numbers, vote for me for the presidency. But you see, he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. It cost him the presidency. And he's done this in 2013, he's done this in 2017, he's done this in 2022. So how do you blame Raila's handlers? How do you blame, for example, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who did his very best to support him? So this is the other thing. But the second thing that you say, which also I wanted to help address, Raila is going to run for president in 2027. It's not just about to go anywhere right now.
Is it?
Yeah,
okay.
no, as sure as the sky, is going to be on the ballot in 2027. So to wish him away, and if you see his trend, and you know, is someone I admire very much in terms of his prowess, in terms of running out there. Raila is admirable, but Raila feels on the low of his inner circle. You know, every election cycle, his inner circle is stuffed with people who just want to tell him what he wants to hear.
Okay.
And that's where he fails. You know, this time around he was flown to Dubai, he was in high-flying jets, he was being shown how he's won the presidency. That's not how a president works. A president gets people in his inner circle, people who prick him, people who prick your conscience, people who ask you the hard questions. But if you want to only hear what you want to hear,
quite an astute leader. You want to tell me the man that we're talking about, and you know, of course, giving him lots of praises as to how he's handled the political matters and genuinely metamorphosized to be what he is today. I mean, you want to tell me that he does not understand this, that he does not know that around him lots of sycophants that really could land him in trouble. You want to tell me here?
I mean, he likes it that way, and that is his greatest problem.
Okay.
You know, if a leader wants the people who entertain him, look at who has made it president. You know, if you look at President Moi, the people in Moi's inner circle were not people who were not nice to him. Someone who is going to make the president win an election must be someone who bullies the president.
Yeah.
The president must allow himself to be bullied. The president must allow himself to be told the hard facts. Look, and Ontario said it very well. Raila was made to think that he's won the presidency. He had the deep state, he had everything else. So he's lying pretty as opposed to going out to fight for it.
And you think he did not?
I mean,
could have done it different? How?
First of all, you know, my friend, there is Raila's chief agent, Kipchoge, you know, we were sat in the master's class together. The fellow had no Form 34As. There were Form 34As across anywhere. And you see, this was my problem with Raila you remember in 2013, I've told Raila, as his favorite member of parliament then, we didn't have Form 34As. So what election were you contesting? How many votes were stolen by Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto? If you do not have Form 34As to show us what, and the same thing repeated itself. In 2022, they had no Form 34As. So how do you even go to the Supreme Court contesting what? Same thing, 2013, 2017, 2022, no lessons learned, and you want us to again, and you know, look at what Raila is going to do in 2024. There's going to be a referendum about removing judges, removing IBC. The referendum is not going to succeed. It's very predictable. It's very cyclic. It's very cyclic in its, so it's not intentional in terms of how he wants to become president. Raila should be intentional about becoming president, then he will become president. But if at all he wants to work on a cyclic, or you know, it's very predictable. 2024, the referendum is going to fail. We're going to want to remove the judiciary. We're going to remove IBC. It's 2027. He has prepared nothing. Same in Asako. No.
Let's drop that one for a moment and talk about what is happening in the country. And remarks that have really sparked lots of, you know, criticism and as well some essence of appreciation in equal measures. That is as to what it is that the Deputy President speaks of. Gachagua says that, you know, we need to get back to that shamba system. Something that many would argue, you know, this is as good as land grabbing. Others saying that this is the only sure way for us to get our agriculture right. What do you make of that, Ochari?
I think the shamba system works very nicely. There are places where it has succeeded, and for some reason, when it comes to weed cultivation, it works very well. Guys do it very well in the forests, and they don't interfere with the forest cover, obviously because it protects the weed. Now, the shamba system, for a country that is in need of food like Kenya, is a much welcome idea. The problem is, it's another way of allowing Kenyans to actually cut down what? Trees, because we are not disciplined.
Right.
That is why it does not make sense. If you go to a disciplined, well-educated population that understands the value of forest cover, then you can tell them, let's get into the shamba system, because you'll know once they're done with the cultivation of whatever crops they're doing that, they're growing, they'll not cut down what? Trees. Now, the point he made is that as the trees get taller,
automatically they'll protect themselves.
Yes. What he does not understand is if it's me who's doing the farming, if the trees get taller and then begin affecting the production of my crops, I'll cut down the trees.
Okay.
That is what Kenyans will do. So I think it's a moment of excitement, and it needs to tone it down. Yeah, the Shamba system can only work in a disciplined and well-informed, climate, not Kenya. The forest cover we have is very small. When Uhuru became president, I think in 2013 it was at 6%. Now it's gone up to around 7%. That is not enough. If you go to a place like DRC, you're talking about 30% forest cover. So we're far much behind. So we don't need to do that. Let's just increase the amount of fertilizers we're giving to farmers and let them farm in what we have, not forests.
It will be hard for him to reverse this, especially knowing that people who are around these forest areas are so excited about this whole matter. And therefore, I mean, the moment you get to tell them again that let's do a reversal of the same, and then of course as well, it will spur lots of reactions. What do you make of this proposal that he presents? Aside from the fact that, there's that excitement and all that, there's that need for us to address the question of agriculture and get it right.
So first of all, I co-lead the United Green Movement Party.
Yes.
And so for us as Greens, I think Kenya needs to enhance its tree cover. The Constitution Article 69 presupposes that we'll have 10% tree cover. Whatever we can do to make sure that tree cover gets to 10% and beyond, because how do you get agriculture? You get agriculture from the rain. And how do you get rain? You get rain from tree cover. So we must increase our tree cover to get rain-fed agriculture going, So Onchari is correct in terms of saying that the Shamba system would work where people were disciplined. But we've known that Kenyans are not disciplined. Kenyans themselves, even the leaders themselves, don't follow the law. So in a rule of law country, a Shamba system would not be a problem. I mean, there are two forests that I've visited. If you go to Marsabit Forest, for example, the forest community associations around Marsabit Forest are working very well in terms of helping spruce up the forest, and they're benefiting from it. If you go to parts of the forest, sections of the Mau where the Ogeks are living, they're intermingling very correctly with the forest, both biodiversity and also extracting the forest, the ecosystem services, of the forest, of the honey and stuff like that, and the herbs. So there are communities that can coexist with the forests. So let's give it to them that, there are, I think, also communities around the Mbobout forest, for example, coexisting with the forest in a manner, because they know that supports their livelihoods. But look at who received the news of the Shamba system. It's so millers. It's so millers who are giving accolades to the deputy president. That this is a very good thing. Thanks for removing the moratorium. For them, they're not thinking big term. They're not thinking long term about forest cover. They're thinking about these over-maturing trees that they want to fell. So for them, the Shamba system is more about let's have access to the forest, let's have stuff. So I think Kenya needs a proper policy orientation, and I really think the deputy president, like Onchari says, let's tone down on rhetoric. Let's get down to real policy issues. What he's proposing, there's already a legislation in place, the amendment of the Kenya Forest Act 2005, which was giving communities that living next to the forest access to the forest for purposes of plowing and benefiting. So there is already a law. So what he was talking about is not been imagined before. However, there has been a lack of enforcement of that law to ensure that people benefit from the forest and also help us increase forest cover. So first of all, I think what he should have done, or what the president needs to do, is to see what have been the shortcomings of the proposed PLS system, where people have both livelihoods and supporting the forest ecosystem. So once we see where the bottlenecks, if we were to increase the forest askaris, the enforcement around the forestry, and the proper deliverables of families, you can actually task families to have deliverables. If an enforcement mechanism was to be in place, then nothing is wrong with having a Shamba system. But we know that the enforcement system is where we've been lacking. That's number one. But the second thing is I would not propose a Shamba system in indigenous forests. A place like a Kakamega forest, for example. I mean, one of Kenya's largest growing indigenous forests. You cannot start experimenting with this kind of Shamba system in that kind of, then we need our indigenous trees to grow. So it's a delicate balance. It's exciting political rhetoric to go out there for sawmillers, but again, it's delicate for country that needs to increase its tree cover. So I think the policy orientation needs to be thought through before we can make this kind of pronouncement that the deputy president made.
All right, well, a proposal he made that we really are not privy to the information as to how they intend to see this happen, and therefore, if they would come up with such policies that you speak of, then definitely perhaps this would be given a chance. At a time when the economy is reeling, and that acknowledgement by the deputy president himself, as well as the president, saying that around 65 of of revenue that we collect, 65% goes to payment of debt. Of course, goes to a level where he says there's that need for us to go down on our knees and pray for the nation. Beyond that, what do you expect of the Ruto presidency or the Ruto government in terms of us getting to this space of economic emancipation? We started by speaking to the UGM core party leader, who argues that there's still no proper understanding of what the bottoms-up approach is all about from the very same people that are preaching this gospel.
Well, it's very easy to actually put together what the Ruto presidency portends or has for Kenyans. I think the president, the president is a very methodical man. I read all the 69 pages of his Kenya Kwanza manifesto. There is nothing that is rocket science level, very basic stuff, empowerment of, you know, the bottom people, you know, the hustlers, as we can call them. And, you know, I don't want us to spend a lot of time talking about bottom-up.
Of course not. It's the economy at large, not necessarily the bottom-up.
Yeah, at some points, you know, there was a heated debate, oh, is it an economic approach, is it an economic model? You know, that was settled. Now, anytime, you know, the Kenyan middle class is fake. We don't have a middle class that is solid. What we have are poor Kenyans and a very small percentage of maybe 0.5 that is very rich. So the moment you pick the poor Kenyans and empower them in whichever way, and then you bring them up to the middle class, you actually solve the Kenyan economic crisis. And I expect the president to do what he said he'd do when he was a deputy president. And because he's a prayerful man, you know, if there's anything we've been able to learn from his run for presidency is once you're prayerful, things happen. Kenya is going to rise very, very soon, actually sooner than we expect. The economy is going to turn around. Kenyans are very optimistic. And from the request he made when he was abroad, he requested, of course, for some debt relief and stuff like that. And I expect so much, so in terms of support from outside. And of course, he's disciplined. I don't expect him to overborrow the way the retired president did. You know, especially around the COVID-19 period, Kenyatta went on a borrowing spree. And you know, it was borrow and steal, which was quite unfortunate. So I don't expect President Ruto to do that.
Right.
And once you borrow and you spend in the right manner, then you know you've done it well. And then, of course, there's what we call useless investment on non-productive capital projects. For example, if you ask me the amount of money which was poured into SGR that is not breaking even up to date, I'll tell you it was a waste. But that is what we got used to when Uhuru was president. I don't think he understood the basic economics of building a country like Kibaki did. So if you look at the first step which has been put in place by this president, you can tell where we headed. They came in and immediately, you know, fertilizer prices were brought down. If Kenyans can plant at this moment, and then 3 months down the line, do you know what will happen? Prices of foods will do what? Will go down. So that is one problem solved. And in the next few months, I think I expect fuel prices to go down. Then from there, Kenyans can be able to do what? Prosper on their own. Kenyans are very hardworking people. So Ruto needs to do a few things to actually get the country going. And I can predict in about 2 years, you'll be able to see he will be the best president after Kibaki.
Well, we cross fingers. Well, he speaks of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who's an economist, you know, and could not get it right in terms of the economy. Well, that aside, we agree that indeed we are not in the best space if we are to speak about, you know, the finances of the country. And so what other alternatives, or what are the alternatives that this presidency then should have to make sure that they seal the loopholes, you know, to that effect, to make sure that at least we have a vibrant, something good, or at least we have an upward trajectory in terms of dealing with the problems of the economy?
I think let's give it to President Ruto that he's done a couple of 3 good things. I mean, the 4 things that he did on the day of inauguration, I think were real killers, you know, in terms of development parlance, shock and awe. Swear in the 6 judges of the Court of Appeal, give power to the police with regard to their being able to take care of the budget, remove the fuel subsidy. Those three things that he did really would turn around his presidency. Because one, part of the problems that that we had with the Uhuru Kenyatta's administration is a state capture. And if at all you have the institutions of the Kenya's democracy working together, if you leave parliament free, if you leave the judiciary free, to be sure that they're able to determine and make things happen, then you have a country that is going on. Look at what the police were suffering. The police had zero budget. The police had no budget, so it essentially they were relying on someone else to run their affairs. So the fact that the securitization of the Kenya's economy, the police are feeling that they're in charge of their own space. I think those are very good things. But the third one was the removal of the fuel subsidy. You know, so two things happened. Let me explain. You see how the fuel pricing of a country works. Kenya buys fuel every month. Kenya buys fuel every month. So unfortunately, most people must have thought that because President Ruto came president on the 15th, fuel prices went up. No, fuel prices will always go up every 15th day of the month in any Kenya. Yes, whether it was President Uhuru Kenyatta, President Raila Odinga, or President whoever. The 15th of the month, there's going to be a fuel change in price, either high or low. Why? Because Kenyans buy fuel through the open tender system, which is once a month, and so the prices are already set up. But the fuel subsidy, we were subsidizing money we didn't have. So what was going to happen to Kenya is that in the next 1 or 2, 3 years, 1 or 2, 3, 4 months, this fuel we're subsidizing, they were not even paying the oil marketers. So simply saying that, you know, in 1 or 2 months, we're going to really, will be in debt that we cannot pay to the oil marketers. The oil marketers can then not buy the fuel. You know how they buy the fuel? They buy the fuel upfront. So if they don't have money to pay for it, there's not going to be fuel in the country. Someone will be wondering, how come we're subsidizing fuel, then there's no money. So I think it is a good thing that it did. So Kenyans are going to deal with the high fuel cost prices for the next 2 or 3 months. But after that, it should now normalize, which is going to be a good thing. The next thing the president should do is then to remove half the taxes on the fuel. We can tax other things. We can tax other things, you know, in the manufacturing sector and stuff like that. But make sure the cost of fuel is slightly low, because everything else, transport, production, relies on fuel. So if at all, you know, if you look at the Kenyan fuel cost, 55% or so is tax. Remove the tax on the fuel, take the tax elsewhere, we'll then be able to build the economy. But something that Onchari said that I want to agree with is, you know, whenever you see big infrastructure projects, anywhere in Africa, anywhere in the world, just no theft is going on. You don't have to look for where the theft is. Just look for SGR, know how much have they stolen from here. You look for the construction of Uhuru Park, which they're now saying is very good, just go find out how much was stolen. You don't have to, if you want to look for theft, don't look anywhere, don't look in big books. No, just look at the construction. And so I think President Uhuru perfected construction to steal. You know, build something big, take this railway to Kisumu, reconstruct it, steal something, it collapses within, you know, so I think that sort of recklessness with the economy should not be entertained. But back to this bottom-up economy. You see how Africa needs to thrive and Kenya needs to thrive is the Kenyan people are hardworking in their own nature. If you go to Kisii, they're doing their cane, they're doing their avocado. If you go to Homa Bay, they're doing their fish, they're doing something like that. I think what the presidency needs to do is to give these people at the low level the space to do what they're good at. You know, what they have comparative advantages in doing. Let the fishermen fish and let them get good money for their fish. Let the people in Kisii plant avocados. Let's add value. Let's do value addition. You know, if you do add value addition to the avocados, to the bananas, we'll then be creating employment. That's how to do, you know. Let them do what they know how to do best, then do value addition. Through value addition, then we'll be having employment created in the process. So it does not need rocket science.
Right.
Just give us an enabling environment, make sure the fuel costs are low, give us security like the president has done, make sure that the police can be able to take care of my small parcels, my small gunias, and the economy will spur. And with a good and flashing judiciary, I just hope that Parliament is not captive. Because if Parliament then is captive and they want to dance around looking for small parks, then we have a problem. The Parliament must work, the judiciary must work, and must have a check on the presidency, and then Kenya will grow. We don't need anything else.
All right, and you speak of security. I think it's only fair that we also address the Turkana bandit attacks. The likes of the Kuru Court loses his sister on this. And it's quite an unfortunate matter. And the president says that he's going to make lots of adjustments on the security sector. Just how successful will he be on getting this right? We take a short break and then we come back, expound more on that.
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
bipolar,
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
and even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games. You have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning price of land.
Don't miss out. Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms from...
For that matter, for the longest time that we know, then definitely it means that the government needs to do more in terms of guaranteeing the masses security. The Turkana bandit attacks are definitely one that needs to be, condemned hugely, and especially when it gets to the security men and women themselves, then you ask yourself, what is left of the common mwananchi who's not able to protect themselves? And so when we're looking at this, and we come to you on Chari, yes, in studio, Oyeyo on Chari, as well as Agostino Neto, helping us to expound on this. One is tempted to ask, is this an economic agenda that is being projected or protected by politics? And why is it that year in, year out, we speak of these banditry attacks? I mean, the Kapedo Triangle debacle we've not been able to address. We have seen this happening in Karamojong, perhaps Museveni managing to tame it, as one would want to look at. But then again, what is happening to us that we're not able to get this, and how much security can be security enough to address the same?
Thank you so much. I want to send my word of sincere condolences to those who've lost loved ones. It's quite unfortunate. At such a difficult time, it's not pretty to lose, a family member. That is the first one. The second one, of course, is one of the reasons why we've not gotten it right on security during especially the Kenyatta period is the very nature of the president.
Yeah.
Uhuru Kenyatta was hands-off in what mattered and hands-on in very trivial things.
Right.
He'd make a lot of noise. There was a lot of back and no bite. Now, when you listen to the current president, of course, back then deputy president, there is something about him. When he says something, most likely because he's always sober, he actually follows up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I'm not trying to compare him with anyone else, but he has told us he's sober 24/7. So he follows up on what he says. And we had the nonsense of politicization of security during, especially the second term of the retired president. You remember there was a time Fred Matiang'i, as CS for Interior, decided to withdraw police reservists from those areas where we've, like Elgeyo Marakwet, West Pokot, and it happened. So when he was questioned, he said he had not done it, but of course the truth is he had actually done it. So in the process after the withdrawal, there was an increase in those attacks, bandit attacks, and we had so many people being killed. So that was because of the differences, I think, he had with the then deputy president, who's now president. So I listened to the word he gave yesterday pertaining to the attacks, and I'm expecting very, very serious action to follow. So I think that is going to be sorted. That is number one. Number two, I'd like us to understand the genesis of the problem. Sometimes we tend to focus so much on the symptoms and not the root cause of the problem. So There is primitivity. You know, we've not gotten beyond the culture of if I invade a neighboring clan and get some cows, I'm not man enough. The number two is poverty and hunger. If these issues are taken care of, then I think we'll be able to provide the required security for our people. So even as we talk about increasing the number of police officers and stuff like that, we have to make sure our people are taken care of in terms of food, and then they're also educated against retrogressive and old cultural practices like wrestling. Because the people, you know, those are, I've been to Turkana once, and I met some young men who told me that, you know, once you get to 16 years, you're not considered a man until you invade a neighboring clan and come back with the herds of cattle. That is something that needs to be dealt with at an educational level. They have to be sensitized. It has to be dealt with this in the same way we're dealing with FGM. So it's a problem which has to be sorted using a variety of, you know, approaches, not just one.
All right.
Yes. I think Onchari is being unfair to my Turkana brothers. But first, his condolences to the people who've lost their families. I mean, I really think it's tragic. We appreciate that it's not fair for people to lose life and limb to this kind of circumstances. But the issue of cattle rustling is nothing primitive. It's just organized theft. I mean, I wanted to understand it that way. I mean, it's not what it was. You know,
but we've grown beyond that.
50 years ago,
yes.
50 years ago, the Luos, the Kisis, the Maasais would be stealing cows across the place, and it used to be fun. It used to you're man enough. But what we're watching right now in parts of Turkana and in the Pokot area is just organized theft. It's leaders who know that this is business, send in lorries, and they're known. You know, the unfortunate part is they're known, the people, it's organized crime. Organized crime, organized theft, send the boys, go, bring the lorries and stuff. So it's not anything that's primitive or rudimentary, no, it's organized theft. But having said that, I think that's why I was lauding the president's act of giving the police the budgetary powers. You know, there's nothing as good as having autonomy, but autonomy without money, then there's a problem. See, right now the IG of the Inspector General of Police now has money. So he can back both his ideas plus the money he has on the budget. Earlier on, you know, he was relying elsewhere. So you can have all these good ideas, these grand ideas, but in terms of implementing a security strategy, you might not have the budget. So I think it's a good thing in terms of making them autonomous. So I think that's great. But the third thing is that the infrastructure around the northern Kenya area, the Pokot, Turkana, needs to be worked on as a matter of urgency. Look, the place, for a long time, the fact that the place has been marginalized. If you travel Turkana, if you travel the hinterland, and I've had the privilege of living there 7 years and more, and that's why I didn't just walk in once and come out. That's the reason why I appreciate some of this part of lifestyle. If you improve the infrastructure of Turkana, you open up 90% of the country to tourism, to economic prosperity, to security, because then the reason why you also have the bandits going on for too long is the infrastructure, even to get police deployment. If you remember the Baragoi massacre, for example, just to get deployment from Maralal to Baragoi to South Thor, if at all there's going to be an attack in Ileret, it will take us years to just move police and stuff like that. But that whole place needs to be opened up. You know, look at the cases of incidences of insecurity around Moyale and Marsabit, between Isiolo, Marsabit and Moyale. Before the road, every weekend you'd be reading about attacks. But right now with the road and the improved infrastructure, because of deployment and how security goes there. So what we need to do, apart from making the police independent, rallying down on the organized crime that is banditry, we also need to improve the infrastructure of the area so that, one, they don't feel marginalized. In fact, some of the attitude you have of the young people there is because as early as 2005, when I was in northern part of the country, they'd be wondering what is happening in Kenya. Yeah. Because they'd be seeing, like, they've been so marginalized to the extent that no one is bothering about them. So we really need to make sure that Turkana, Marsabit, and those areas feel like they're really part of this one whole by improving the infrastructure. And also, I think, then the security issues just come down, and the primitive nature will then be civilized, and I think we'll be having a good country.
All right. Onchari, should we be speaking about declaring drought a national disaster in this time and age? We know there's that change of guard, but last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta did that. He declared drought, a national disaster. Today we're talking about, Esel County is really facing it hard. And it's quite unfortunate that we're losing lives to that extent. I mean, what then does the Ruto presidency face in terms of, making sure that they get this right and that Kenyans really will not lose life on basis of the fact that, well, there are no rains, and even worse, that there's no food. And when we're talking about drought cases, how do we get it right on the question of agriculture?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think it's long overdue. And I think there needs to be a difference between what retired President Uhuru was doing and what the current president needs to do. Once you come out and say something is a national disaster, it has to be followed by action. So for the retired president, it was just, like going through the motions. It never meant any serious action had to be taken. So Ruto has to be different. And when you look at what's going on, especially in places like Meru, where people have always been self-sufficient, very independent, very hardworking, doing wonderful farming. But now, they've lost their animals and they've sold everything. Yesterday I watched and it's very sad. So I think it has to be declared a national disaster, and then the president has to have a very, very well-organized and long-lasting response or solution. And I think I also want to call upon governors in all these places to make sure the national response to drought as we speak, because most of the time, they let it become a national government issue and they don't get involved. They can come in and help, to mitigate the suffering that is going on using maybe their own budgetary allocations, and so as to avoid the loss of lives. It's you see people eating dead camels in places like Meru, it shouldn't get to that level. And we need to find a way to make use of rainwater runoff. We have to find a way in which where it can be collected. We actually need to come up with a intensified drilling of boreholes in places where, there are no rivers. We just have to come up with a permanent solution.
Right.
In the 21st century, it's a shame that a country as strong as Kenya can be losing people due to lack of water. It is a shame. So we expect the tough-talking, well-organized, sober president to sort out this mess so that the next president will be dealing with other things. We don't have to talk about lack of water again. And at the same time, it's not just about lack of water. There are places where people die because of floods, like Kano. We shouldn't hear that. So let's get ready to see watu wanabebwa na maji when it begins, raining again. So Ruto has to just sort it. Because
as he tries to sort this out, Agostino, he comes to us and alongside his deputy and his foot soldiers with that owl moment, as if this gets them by surprise. I mean, they have been part and parcel of the previous government, and some of these things, even as Kenyans, we have been speaking of day in, day out. Does it inspire any form of confidence when they have to speak about this in the public domain day in, day out? When President Uhuru Kenyatta at some point comes out to the public to tell them that this is the amount of money, 2 billion shillings a day that we lose, what do you expect me to do in all this? It ebbs off a bit of confidence that Kenyans would have. Should they just treat this, as, of course, difficult as it is, but in silence, and let's see action as opposed to lots of public, conversations and them going out to podiums to remind Kenyans of how difficult a state we are in?
I mean, give it to the president. I have watched the 3 or 4 interviews he's done abroad. I watched his speech at the UN General Assembly. I watched the interview he gave to Al Jazeera. And I watched him again. We know when he was out. It was in my interest to see what he brings to the table. One of the things that he's been constant about, and I hope he believes what he's talking about, is making Kenyans adapt to climate change and climate change mitigation. Because some of the things that we're watching as a country, the floods speaks about in Nyando, the drought, is as consequences of climate change.
Yeah.
So I hope that the presidency can then tie that climate change agenda to help Kenya move towards adaptation and resilience. So that's one question that I'll come back to. But the second thing that I think we really need to do is that it's good and important to speak about it, constantly speak about it, because then in the national psyche, it tells the people that, one, you're abreast to the issue. So it's a good thing to constantly keep it, let's hear you talk about it. So that way we know you're gripped with it. But if you see what give it to President Ruto that he was part of Uhuru's presidency, but looks like there were a few things that he was uncomfortable with. I'll give you one live example. For what reason would he just be swearing in 6 judges that have been there for too long on day one? You know, that simply means that, you know, either he was advising the president, that is what is the job of the deputy, let us get this thing done. It's harmless. And the president was not doing it. The second thing that he does, which has been a serious thing, and you might not understand, the issue of the fuel subsidy. Why would he on day one as a president just get off the fuel subsidy? That simply means that there are a few things that he was not comfortable with, that the things should have been sorted out. So given those 2 or 3 activities that for me caught my interest, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he looks like he knows what he wants to do, and we just need to give him goodwill. But now, to the most serious thing in terms of how to sort out the drought problem. Is the drought a national disaster? It should not be. Because, you know, we know weather patterns, and we have a meteorological department that keeps telling us what the weather patterns are. Kenya is a really strange country that you go to Nyandarua, and there are places around Nyandarua, they have milk, they have sweet potatoes, they have Irish potatoes, they do not know what to do with it. It's rotting. Cabbages, in fact, the moments when I've gone to the Kinangop area, you've gone to Nyandarua area, the cabbages are rotting by the roadside. You go to Turkana, which is a place, there's nothing. I mean, there is basically no food. So whether Kenya is food sufficient, I think we're food sufficient. What we need to do is to work on a distribution chain and one that works. What do we need as a country? I think we need an overarching governance legislative framework. I'll explain. You know, the right to food, the right to water, which is what we're suffering, this drought, is a county task. It's a work of the governors. However, it also falls on the national government to enforce or superintend that. So what do we need to do? We need a holistic governance framework, a legislative framework that brings in the governors and the national government in space to speak to each other. That is lacking. That is lacking. That is why the response system in terms of food, the food response, you know, the minister for devolution or whatever it's called, there is no infrastructure in terms of how then they converse with the governors. So I really think we need a legislative framework on, I mean, I'm thinking about a framework right to food legislation where the governors have a place where they speak with the presidency, they speak with cabinet to make sure that the obligations, you see, where is the problem right now? People will die of hunger in Turkana. No one is held responsible. I mean, it cannot be the chief, it cannot be the governor. But you see, what a legislative framework helps you do is that there are duties. You assign duties to a particular office. So you can then have petitions, you can then have conversations, you can then have someone being brought to book. If the governor, for example, of Turkana is sleeping on the job, you can then say, I have come to make my right to food justiciable. I have come to ask, my sister died, my cows died, my sheep died because of drought, and they're supposed to be culpable. And there's a legislative framework. Right now, the Constitution only makes it aspirational in the meaning of Article 43. And until you break it down to make sure that someone is held culpable, we'll then be speaking constantly about drought. Someone must go to court. Someone must feel the pain of women and children dying in Turkana, and you cannot do that absent a proper legislative framework. That's what we really need to work on first and foremost. And then number 2, like I said, the president is, I think, getting it correct with using these interesting and big terms, climate change adaptation, mitigation. I hope he walks the talk in terms of, you know, working towards having a country that adapts to climate change issues, because that is then what sorts out our country in the long term. Forget about the Galana Kulalu theft that we watched. You know, when you're talking about food security and the right to food, 2 different things. Because food security, like I've told you, we might be having a lot of food in Nyandarua, we might be having a lot of food in Kitale, but the people in Marsabit, the people in Kwale are lacking it because of a framework of distribution. So food security and the right to food, 2 different things. Once we work in harmony to make sure that those 2 can speak to each other, then I think the country will be on the right.
All right. I don't know whether you want us to speak briefly about the formation of cabinet. Many would argue that the president should have surprised us, you know, almost immediately upon swearing in the next day, like the likes of Kibaki. If it is Kibaki that he emulates, he gives us a list of the cabinet, but he's not done that. Perhaps looking into so many matters, I am told that even the clergies are eyeing this, you know, that is in the line of, you know, religion. Some think it's a good thing. Others argue, no, that we are a secular state and therefore that should not be a factor. But then again, whichever the face of the cabinet, Kenyans are looking forward to one that would, you know, come in to gel into, of course, his plans for the nation, and that together they'd be able to steer it forward. Long overdue?
Yeah, well, I couldn't say so, because at the end of the day, the president has a big team.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's an expectant nation, which expects him to actually come up with a cabinet which captures the mosaic of the Kenyan people. And from what we gathering from the streets, the cabinet will be good.
You know, when you speak of that, it reminds me that I've seen your face in, you know, what is moving around the streets. And therefore, have you received this phone call? Are we looking forward to have a CS by the name?
That phone call.
We cross fingers for that.
That phone call should come.
I will.
Our best of luck.
Best of luck as well, I'll say. Yeah.
Well, I haven't gotten any phone call, but
Yeah.
if the phone call comes, I'll be glad to serve in his administration.
Right.
What I'd expect, of course, this is a president who's come in and made so many promises, and Kenyans expect actually to see every tribe captured in that. Of course, we have 42 tribes and we only have 22 cabinet slots.
Yeah.
But then, we don't expect a cabinet which is going to lean towards one side or two sides or three sides.
Right.
And I expect him to deliver that. Then number two, I don't think there's need to rush the formation of cabinet only to underwhelm the expectations. As you said, the country is suffering.
Yeah.
And for you to get it right, you actually have to get men and women who can deliver. So I'm happy that he's taken his time and let him give us the names. You know, he was elected, he won the election. So it's now his duty to come up with his team.
Right.
So let's give him his time and let him get people who can get the job done.
And on several occasions, his deputy speaks of, you know, tutaleta, you know, a cabinet secretary who understands what they are doing. Tutaleta, a cabinet secretary who's going to make a difference because of, you know, the basis of understanding. Technocrats versus, you know, politicians is one of the things that has been on the table. A 50-50 affair in terms of getting around 10 women and perhaps 12 men. If we were to speak about that, representation in terms of regions, also one of the things that is being looked at, definitely in terms of, you know, getting the vulnerables on board, of course, the women, speaking of the youth and all that. Neto, just how does he play with the dice, you know, dangle it to make sure that he gets it right?
I think when I hear the deputy president speak and the president speak, there's a bit of hope that one, you need a cabinet that is competent, you know, full of competence. I mean, I'd be disappointed if the president chooses to reward just his cronies who are not competent. I have no problem if he rewarded his cronies and if they're competent.
Right.
You know, so that for me would be number one test. Let there be competence in the cabinet. The second thing that he has spoken to, and I hope he keeps his word, is equality. I mean, I look forward to a 50-50 cabinet. He said it. For me as a Green, a member of the Green Party who believes in co-leadership, I really would like to see 50-50 cabinet. I mean, there are competent women in this country. There are competent young people, youth in this country. I also want to see the place of persons with disability. Article 54.2 of the Constitution speaks about 5%. I mean, I really look forward to a cabinet of, you know, out of the 5%, out of the 4 persons with disabilities sitting in that cabinet. Because if we believe in constitutionalism, if we want to live the spirit of the Constitution, the people with disability must find themselves in that cabinet. Women, youth, marginalized communities should be part of that cabinet, but more so it should also be one that is competent. The other thing is, Onchari says it very well, it has to be the face of Kenya. Article 10 of the Constitution anticipates that, you know, every Kenyan, you should be able to find an Ogiek who is competent. You should be able to find a Rendile who can be in office. You know, so this thing of just looking at Central Kenya or the Rift Valley because that was his voting bloc, that is not the Constitution anticipates. You know, go across the country and because now the president is a symbol of unity, the parts of the country did not get votes from, bring those people on board. Let's form one country that moves forward. But one of the things I'd like to caution is the president needs institutional memory. There ought to be a few members of the cabinet or a few people who understand and appreciate cabinet. You know, one risky thing that most African presidents would do, and especially for President William Ruto, I know half the cabinet may not have been supportive of him, given what we were watching from the streets. But it will be really, really a mess if he walks in with a clean slate and not having 1 or 2 people who understands how corruption is done so that you undo corruption, how understands how government is run so that you either improve or not. Because if you go in with a group of all clean, you have a problem.
Yeah.
The civil society, I mean, the civil service is a place where you really need the person who was not making the correct kind of tea so that you fix the right kind of tea. You need to know who was stealing the most, how are they stealing, so that you block those avenues of theft. But otherwise, if at all you go in with a clean slate thinking that you're going to bring in feasts of bishops and whatever it is. I have no problem with bishops and imams being part of the cabinet, but let us have a few people with institutional memory who can then help him understand what was happening. I mean, he was deputy president, yes, but he was deputy president, but might not have known everything else that's going on. There are many things that happens in this country. The government is an octopus. There are many hands and limbs everywhere else. You need all these people to help you move the country forward.
All right, gentlemen, you know, there's still so much that we'd have loved to touch on, but time would not allow us for the same. I'll give you a minute to give us your parting shots before we call it a day. We start with you.
Thanks for a wonderful discussion. And once again, the country is suffering economically. Right. I'm glad the president understands that. The deputy president understands that. The team is big. It has men and women with a lot of experience. I'd like to agree with my friend here that he needs people. The president and his deputy need people who've been in government and understand how it's done. Now, fortunately, when you look at all these guys, you look at the president himself, you look at even the deputy president, you look at Musalia Mudavadi, former deputy prime minister. He has been a minister, he has been a vice president, he has been a part of government. You look at Moses Wetangula, he has been a cabinet minister. You know, all these guys in Kenya Kwanza have been in government. So they do not have to pick anybody who was in Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet. In fact, if they decide to recycle even a single person from the Kenyatta administration, it will be a sad reminder of a failed 10-year period, which historians have begun calling the dark decade, you know, the wasted Kenyatta years. So I want them to understand that Kenyans are suffering. They need to move with speed and deliver for Kenyans. That is all.
All right.
I hope that the president is not listening to Onchari for advice. He needs to keep some people from the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. Look,
for what purpose?
I was not there. I was not part of Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, but I'm explaining to you how governance works. The moment you move in with a clean slate and you think that all these people who are with Uhuru Kenyatta, I mean, let's be blunt. I mean, I have some of the insights to what was happening, for example, during the president's party after inauguration. I mean, there was little bottleneck. You know, people feel, you know, the civil service is full of entitlements. Until you can unlock the entitlement of the civil service. And how do you do that? You do it in the manner of cooking a frog, progressive. You don't walk in the day with a clean slate. The first year there will be no budget. So you need progressive. You need to eliminate them as you move on. You know, you'll have learned how they're not doing the correct job. Now you replace them.
But some of them were picked by the deputy president then. Now who is the president? So they say.
And unfortunately, they moved on. Allegiances changed. You know, things changed. But we wish the president well. For us as Greens, like we've said, we're happy to churn in green ideas to this particular government. We're happy to help with ideas on how to do their bottom-ups properly. You know, turning waste into money, making sure that the environmental degradation is worked on properly, and helping the tree cover. So we want to have thoughts that, you know, in the next 5 years or 10 years, if at all it's going to be there for that long, we'll have a green country. You know, we have a country that, you know, believes in green things. And I have a problem with my friend Sakaja cutting down trees to chase away Marabu stocks. That pains me because we need more green spaces in the country, and we need to make sure that biodiversity is encouraged. So let's have more green trees. It's for the importance of the people of Kenya. Air quality, rain, all these things you talk about, and there's a way the environment regenerates itself. So you will be having litter that you cannot regenerate. So let us keep our environment in a manner that is strong and progressive for us. And as Greens, we're happy to constantly come on TV, come on set to prick the conscience of the Kenya Kwanza government in a way that hope they can work for the next 5 years. And Onchari, my very best, if you get a cabinet call, invite us for Timmy and Alela, so that we can say, wish you the best.
Yes. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Oye Onchari, political commentator, as well as the co-party leader of United Green Movement, Honorable Agostino Neto. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we take a quick short break and we come back with a different matter altogether.
You are watching TV 47, the home of untold stories.
As a government-sponsored student, joining Mount Kenya University was the best decision I ever made.